So I'm working on this Wheel Horse 701, and the lift lever was totally locked up, rusted. That is, the shaft going through the center here was locked up with this piece. So I took it all apart and I used a sawzall coming in from the bottom, and I cut this shaft. Luckily there was enough room to go between each edge here, and cut the shaft in two places. So this piece was rusted in there hard. I had to press that out. This is the piece that was in the other side. I was able to get the saw blade in there and not touch these two parts at all. But I did get into the face of this a little bit on each one, but it still has a majority of surface area around there, so that'll still be okay. So now the problem is I need to make a new shaft. So this shaft is welded in there, so I'm going to have to try to duplicate that. So I'm going to take this part out of there. Need to drill it straight so that I can put the new shaft in there in the proper location. So let's see how that works. Alright, I got this lift handle in the mill here. I'm going to drill out what's left of this shaft. So since the handle is on an angle, I'm trying to square up the handle with this surface, which would be parallel to the side of the tractor, and that should be approximately 90 degrees from the shaft. So I just have this clamped in the vise, and I'm using a parallel. This is actually a half-inch piece of high-speed tool steel, and I've moved this handle up and down until I get this surface parallel on each side, and that's about as close as being flat as I can get. This surface is far too rough to use an indicator on. In fact, this edge is not parallel with this edge. So eyeballing it this way is a pretty decent way of doing it. So I think I have this clamped in there at the proper angle, and then to get on location with what's left of this shaft, I'm using my indicator to find the center of that shaft. So now I'm going to drill that out. I'm going to drill through there and ream it or bore it, whatever it takes when I get down there. I may not be able to ream it because the part I'm going through here is going to be on an angle. There's going to be some weld and stuff in there, so I might hit some hard spots. So I might have to use a boring bar or an end mill or something to make a nice hole there. And then I have a shaft of the proper size that I'm going to put into that hole and weld it. So that's the plan. Let's see if it works. So that looks pretty good. There's a little bit of movement in there. That's okay, because I'll be lining it up with a V-block before I weld it. Looks like I got it pretty well centered. You can see a dark area on each side, which is part of the original hole. So now I'm going to get some of that weld out of there so that I can weld it in the same place that they welded it. And I got some weld on the outside to take off also. That looks pretty good. In this case, you're just trying to get back to the original metal. So when I weld it, it might look similar to when they welded it. You can see on the inside, I'm about down to the original metal there. Alright. You see how I can set it up in a V-block or an angle plate or something to hold the shaft when I weld it. Well, that looks good. So I have my vise elevated so I can hold on to the handle, and the shaft is resting on the floor. Got the shaft clamped in the V-block. I did deburr the face of the handle a little bit so that it rests nicely against the V-block. Got my shaft positioned where I think they had theirs positioned. So part of the corner of that shaft will melt away so it doesn't stick up so far. And on the other side, it's recessed a little bit because of the angle. What do you think of that, dog boy? Yeah. Kind of nice that part of my clamping set had a similar angle. It's not exact, but it's close enough to allow the clamping of it. So that's all held in position where I want it. And then I'll weld the outside first. And I weld the inside after I take it off the V-block. Let's see how that works. Definitely on there good. Well, I think that's the only place I'm going to weld it on the inside, because that's about the only place they welded it on the inside. Alright, I think that's going to turn out okay. Welded that on there first so I could cut the length off later. Make sure I get the length right. Don't have the latch installed yet. As you can see, the angle looks pretty good. Alright, I need to cut this off, so I'm going to mark it right there. Take a cutoff wheel to it. But I'll probably finish it up on the mill so I get a nice square end on there. So the angle looks pretty nice here. The face of this is parallel to the face of that. But as you can see, it's got some contact up here. So I'm going to go ahead and add a few spacers in there. Just enough to have a slight clearance right here. I'll probably leave them in when I install it to keep that spacing proper so it's not rubbing right there. Now this is going to have some clearance, so it'll probably be able to come out a little bit. So I may end up putting a spacer on the back side. Get this pin in place, then this piece is what's going to limit how far this comes in and out. So I may add a washer behind that to keep this in position.